I've always found music videos to be an incredibly interesting form of art. The best music videos create memorable visuals, tell impactful stories, and they build on their songs in a way that feels in equal parts inspired by and independent from the source material. The entire format offers such creativity for a filmmaker. You can follow the lyrics in a direct way, telling a clear narrative story, or explore the music in a much more abstract manner, ditching narrative in lieu of aesthetic. Or a filmmaker could tell a story that takes inspiration from the music and its lyrics, but one that is also its own unique thing. Aha's Take On Me video is a great example. While this video obviously fits and takes inspiration from the music, the lyrics clearly never say anything about a woman stepping into the pages of a pencil-drawn comic book. The point is, I've been obsessed for quite some time with the idea of being able to make a music video. The opportunity to use someone else's art as a basis for my own is just something that really excites me, and around April of this year, I finally got that kind of opportunity. A few months earlier, I had submitted my short film K to the All-American High School Film Festival, which is the largest student film festival in the world. During this submission process, I ended up on the festival's email list, and that's how I got this. The email explained that the festival had partnered with Atlantic Records to bring a music video category to the 2021 festival. Basically, they give you a list of songs, you choose one, you make a video, and then maybe you win a prize for it. Now, the opportunity to make a video based on a high-quality, reputable, copyrighted song, let alone to possibly win a prize for it, is an incredibly rare one, so I'm in. I listened to all of the available songs and pretty quickly narrowed it down to a couple of my favorites. In the end, it ended up being a tough choice between Ben Platt's song Imagine and Sarah Kay's song Remember That Night. I'm a pretty big Dear Evan Hansen fan, so naturally a Ben Platt song sounded pretty appealing. The more I listened to Imagine, though, the more I felt myself having a tough time finding any inspiration in it. And that's nothing against the song, it just didn't personally resonate with me the way that Dear Evan Hansen or even some of Platt's other solo music did. Remember That Night, on the other hand, struck me as a very heartfelt and genuine song about heartbreak, and the story its lyrics told provided a good place for me to start with making my own story out of it. So I settled on the song and began to brainstorm with the help of my great friends Ellie and Mandy. For a while, all we had was a vague story outline and a couple of loose visuals that sort of fit the vibe of what we were going for. We kept a running Google document where we pasted images that inspired us, but we all knew we were missing something. These scenes on their own simply weren't going to be memorable or charming enough, but we didn't know what it was that would add that extra charm we needed. As time passed, summer started, people went on vacations, and we spent less and less of our time working on this project. The July 2nd deadline inched closer and closer, and eventually it dawned on us that we had run out of time to make this thing. Flash forward a few days. I was scrolling through Instagram, like a teenager, when I found this post from the All-American High School Film Festival. Deadline extended until July 30th. Well, now I don't have an excuse. I've got to make this thing. Conveniently, inspiration happened to strike around that time, and when looking through camera gear, I remembered that I had this old Nikon Coolpix camera that I borrowed from my grandfather for a different project, which never ended up getting made. I thought, what if some of the shots in the video were actually filmed by the characters themselves? It could add a layer of personality and make us feel even closer and more involved with the characters and their story, and give the whole thing a homemade, nostalgic vibe. From there, the ideas just snowballed, and within a couple of days, we had filled all of the previously empty gaps in the video's storyline. Now, on to the practical stuff, beginning with casting. Casting our female lead was pretty much a no-brainer. A few months prior, I had actually taken home second place in the state in a duo acting competition with my friend Zoe, and she had expressed interest in acting in one of my projects sometime. I asked her if she'd want to be in this, and she said yes. Boom. 1 out of 2 roles cast. The male lead for our video was a tougher role to fill. Most of the actors I know are through theater groups I've been in, and the concentration of girls in theater compared to guys is, if you've been in a theater department, you get the idea. I thought, if only I could be behind and in front of the camera at the same time, but for something like that, I'd need a clone. Wait a minute.
Okay, this is Reese, and this is Reese.
Please don't
and
tell
this
me
is
this
Sam,
isn't a
and
TikTok.
this is Sam.
I really don't
and
want to
this
be on
is
a
Reese,
TikTok.
and
I
this
really
is
don't.
Reese.
And
And this is Sam, and this is Sam.
This is Reese. We did a show together about 1.5 years ago, during which we constantly confused our friends and family in the audience by looking like the exact same person on stage. And by the exact same, I mean tall, lanky, and white blonde guys in glasses who are hard to tell apart from the back row. We bonded over this whole clone thing, and when the show was over, we exchanged numbers and promised we'd talk sometime and do something acting related again together soon. A little less than a year later, I texted him about a different short film I was considering producing, and he said he'd be happy to be in it. When that project fell through, we didn't talk much for a little while, but finally I approached him with my idea for the music video. He was in. I asked my friend Mandy if she'd like to be assistant director again, as she'd already done that job on a couple of my other projects, and she happily agreed. So with the whole crew together, we scheduled 2 days of filming, one at my house and the other in my friend Ellie's neighborhood. This project, which at one point seemed like an impossibility, was actually starting to come together right in front of me. Let's talk gear real quick. As with pretty much everything I do, this video was shot on a Canon T7i, pretty solid camera, though I wish, especially for this project, that it did a little bit of a better job about handling low light situations. All of my lighting was done with my trusty newer light panels, plus 2 of these RGB wand lights from Yongnuo. Seriously, the versatility of these things is pretty insane, and they're fairly cheap considering what lights can sometimes go for, so I would recommend these especially. For the little scene at the end of the video, I used the MKE 600 microphone, which is a great directional mic. It's solid for filmmaking, and I'm currently using it right now to record the audio for this video. Lastly, perhaps my favorite filmmaking tool I've purchased recently is this motorized camera slider from GVM. Sure, I could have gotten a non-motorized one, but a guy has to treat himself every now and then, and this thing brings me nothing but pure joy. All those super smooth slider shots you saw in the music video are produced using this bad boy, and I love it. Anyways, let's talk about the filming process. This summer, I've actually been doing an internship with Sozo Bear Films, a nearby film production company. It's been an amazing experience, and one that I'll surely talk about in more detail in a future video, but for now, what you need to know is that on day 1 of shooting for my music video, I planned a 6 to 10 shoot, which I would drive to from my 10 to 5 job at Sozo Bear. That Tuesday, the workday ended with a trip to the Sozo Bear storage unit to pick up some cardboard for one of their projects. I went home from the storage unit, grabbed some food, and headed to Ellie's house. Plagued with the usual pre-filming jitters, we waited for everyone to arrive, and once they had, we got going. Ellie and I had been on plenty of walks around the neighborhood together before, so we knew just where to go to film a picnic scene between Zoe and Reese's characters. We traveled to a little clearing in the woods and walked a little bit before we eventually got to the place where I wanted to start shooting the scene. Filming the picnic scene went really well, and it gave us our first glance at the chemistry that Zoe and Reese had on screen, which was pretty impressive, honestly. They got along great, we all talked and laughed and enjoyed each other's company, while also still managing to get work done and to get the scene shot. Next, we went and filmed a scene of Zoe sitting in the back of my car, which stars as her car in the video. For this scene, we wanted to do a match cut, meaning we wanted to cut to it from another matching shot setup, which we would film later. Now, for a match cut, you have to know exactly where the camera is, and you have to put it in the exact same place next time. And since this was a slider shot, we had to actually mark where the slider was on the table it was sitting on and where the table was sitting on the ground. Now, this was all a lot of hassle, but it ended up being worth it in the end, as it produced a really cool moment in the video. After we shot that scene, we went inside and we used the ice lights to produce some different lighting conditions, under which we took various photos of Reese and Zoe posing in different outfits. I'll explain why we did that later, but I think if you've seen the music video, you probably get the idea. Once we had finished that, it was finally dark outside, and we were down to just 2 scenes left. First, we filmed the scene of Zoe and Reese together in the car. Now, this is when the chemistry between the two of them arguably reached its peak. I told them where to be for the shot, and then just asked them to have a conversation with one another.
And it was really weird because the last thing I tasted was hand sanitizer.
It was natural and perfect and exactly what I was going for, and before they even knew it, I had wrapped the entire scene. They were so natural on screen together that I didn't even need to give a single direction. They just sort of talked, and I moved the camera around and got like 5 shots without them even realizing it. It was awesome. By the time we had finished filming the final scene of the video, we were only 15 minutes behind schedule, which, while not optimal, honestly isn't all that bad. Day 1 was a successful day of shooting. We finished nearly on time, got great performances, and didn't run into any significant technical issues. I went home, stayed up late looking at all the footage and not being able to sleep from excitement, and eventually passed out. That was Tuesday. My next day of filming was on that Friday, but on Wednesday and Thursday I was actually on set with Sozo Bear Films for another music video. This video will be coming out before that one does, so I can't say exactly what the video was or who the artist was, but let's just say it was a great experience. It was a video for a solo artist that was previously in a duo that was pretty big in the 90s. That's all I'll say. I'm not going to say anything more. After work on Wednesday, I made a special stop on the way home.
Like a receipt.
No, thank you.
You have a good night.
All right, you too. I wanted to have Zoe's character have a bulletin board in her room with photos of her with Reese to add to the realism of the whole thing. It was also a big part of the video's plot to see her tearing some of those photos up in her anger and despair over the breakup, and then later to see her put them back together as a way to show the feelings returning. So after that first night of shooting, I photoshopped those photos I took of Zoe and Reese to put them in front of various backgrounds so we could make it appear as if they'd been together for quite some time. The photos turned out to be a great addition to the whole video, and I'm glad I put in the work to make them. Once I put them up on my bulletin board, we were pretty much ready for day 2 of shooting. Then, as is the way that filmmaking often goes, we ran into yet another issue. Mandy, our amazing assistant director, had a sudden change in family plans come up that prevented her from being able to be on set for Friday's shoot. That left me shooting alone with Zoe with no help moving lights and equipment around, which is not at all optimal given the number of moving parts on our film set. And rescheduling wasn't much of an option either, as Zoe was leaving for a week-long vacation the next day. That meant I needed an assistant director, and I needed one fast. Everyone who had already been involved with the project was unavailable. Mandy, of course, had her plans come up, Ellie was out of town, and Reese was celebrating his grandmother's birthday. I was hoping I could get someone with at least some pre-existing interest in the filmmaking process so that they wouldn't be incredibly bored on set, but I had run out of options for people that fell into that category. So I gave my ever-supportive friend Gary a call and asked if he would do one enormous favor and just be there on set to help out. Gary, being an absolute legend, said yes, and I took the deepest sigh of relief. Once Gary had agreed to help, day 2 of filming went relatively smoothly. I had left my camera batteries at my grandparents' house the night before, and my grandfather, also being an absolute legend, was kind enough to drive them all the way to my house, basically saving the entire video, so thanks, Pop. Here was my issue, though. I needed to film a bunch of nighttime scenes, and if I were to actually start filming them at nighttime, it would force us to be working until about 1 a.m., which was just not a viable option. So I made a little run to the hardware store and got myself some masking tape and black trash bags, which I used to black out the windows in my sister's room for filming. Oh yeah, by the way, thanks to my sister for actually letting us do this in your room, another legend. I put up some extra string lights to add some extra ambiance to the room, I decorated the bulletin boards up a little bit more, and boom, the set was ready to go. So Gary and Zoe showed up and we filmed all of the nighttime scenes. Nothing incredibly exciting happened, and if I'm being honest with you, that's honestly a good thing, as it means we didn't run into any major issues on set. Day 2 was definitely a much more relaxing day of shooting. It wasn't necessarily more enjoyable, but there was significantly less moving from location to location, which really simplified the whole thing. In fact, when we were done doing the room scenes, we had enough time before it got dark to just kind of goof off and have fun, which isn't something we had much of at all during the first day of filming.
Oh, it hit. Oh my god.
Once it did get dark, however, we had just an hour left to film all of the car scenes. So for these scenes, I parked my car sideways in the garage and set up a blue screen. While I filmed Zoe in the car, Gary had the job of spinning one of the wand lights around to simulate street lights on Zoe's face. You'd be surprised at how much fun he had spinning a light around for like 30 minutes, and honestly, I tried it afterwards, and it was pretty fun, so I can't judge. We wrapped filming early and had extra time at the end to goof off some more. We took photos with my camera with an incredibly long exposure while we spun lights around to create these really cool blurred looks. We did a little behind the scenes photo shoot, and we celebrated a job well done and an overall success with shooting this project. Later, my mom took me for a drive so that I could film some general B-roll of the road and street lights for the end of the video, and after that, I had officially wrapped filming for this video. The story of my editing process is not a very interesting one. It's basically just a bunch of me sitting at my computer screen for hours on end perfecting every little detail. I did have a great time doing visual effects on the blue screen shot of Zoe in the car though. That was the most involved I've ever gotten in true visual effect work, and it was a pretty awesome experience that I learned a lot from. In retrospect, I would have tried a little harder to light the blue screen evenly so that parts of it weren't so much lighter than other parts of it to the point where they were showing up as white in the editing software, because that was difficult to sort of mask out. So one of the layers on that shot is actually a transparent pane of glass PNG, and I would turn up the exposure on that pane of glass anytime a light went by on Zoe's face to sort of simulate a glare on the window. Let's see, color editing was pretty crazy. A lot of stuff going on there. Not much that makes for interesting content, but color editing, kind of fun, weirdly satisfying. The other big thing that I did in editing for this project was lens flares. I hadn't worked with them much before this video, but adding 1 or 2 lens flares makes such a huge difference in some of these shots. It's really amazing, actually. It adds a layer of professionality and makes the shot way more cinematic and beautiful. I was pretty careful not to overuse them, I think, but for really emotionally significant turning points in the video, they really help. So yeah, here we are. My first experience making a music video was loads of fun, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. I had the opportunity to work with some truly phenomenal and talented actors and crew members, without which this whole thing would have never happened the way it did. So thank you all. And thank you all who maybe found the video through Zoe and Reese's Instagram, or were already subscribed to me, or found it from my Instagram, whatever, however you got here. Thank you for watching and supporting the music video, and for watching this breakdown of how exactly I made it. I couldn't do it without you either. So I'll see you in the next video, and until then, I'm Sam Morgan, and this is Pictures Up.